Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Josh Mansfield, on this Wednesday, September 25th, one day before the start of the MVP Open at Maple Hill. Great to check in with Steve Dodge yesterday and chat with him about course changes and plenty more. Steve, I feel like Steve went through a period, Josh, where everyone was like just so mad at him and everybody hated him because of the like Jomez stuff and this and that. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Steve Dodge was right about everything and he was just too early.
Yep. That's and listen,
Jomez is owned by the Pro Tour now. Like, like he was right. He was right to want to go to live. He was right to want to do DGN. He just did it badly and it was just too early. He was 5 years too early.
Listen, Steve has gotten flack because he's an ideas guy, not an execution guy. And his ideas have largely worked. They turn out to be correct. He's, that's about 50% on those ideas. And I think that gets him some flack, but you can't say that Steve Dodge is not one of like the most important figures in shaping the history of our sport, at least in the modern era in the past decade.
100%.
Like, if you did a decade in review from 2015 to 2025, like Steve Dodge's name has to be near the top of that list.
I mean, you can imagine like how things would have been different, like if he didn't start the Pro Tour. Does somebody else start the Pro Tour? Does the Disc Golf World Tour work out with UC and like Innova / Discmania at the time? Like what would have happened there? It's very interesting to consider like the alternate universes. What happens if Steve Dodge doesn't get bailed out by Jeff Spring and Todd Rainwater?
What if we go into COVID with only national tour?
Right.
Yeah.
Like I think because of the boom in COVID, if let's say Pro Tour had died, somebody would have started something after that. But like it's just kind of crazy to think about the possible alternate realities and like how lucky Todd Rainwater and Jeff Spring got to buy a like distressed professional disc golf product at bargain basement prices and then have like that purchase go into massive growth. They basically did the opposite thing of the House of Discs private equity partners, right? Like they like bought the low and then kaboom. And the PE guys were like, oh, disc golf looking pretty interesting. Let's throw a bag at these guys. And now they're just like going through it, man. Oh man. It's an interesting time right now.
It is. Charlie, I think in January of 2025, let's do a disc golf decade in review.
That's a great idea.
We need to do that.
Did the Pro Tour start in 2015? Is that the year? I don't remember now.
Charlie, I could not believe you just asked that question. Are you, after all the times you had to sell the 10-year anniversary boxes, you did not just ask if the Pro Tour started in 2015? In other news, breaking news, Charlie no longer welcome to commentate on the Disc Golf Network.
10-year supporter box. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just lost my job as a commentator.
You might have. You gotta buy a box. Jeff Spring's gonna text you. You have to buy a box now.
I already have so many Frisbee boxes here. The video is coming. Okay. It's gonna come out in like a month. It's edited. It's done. All we got to do is
before mystery box season.
Just waiting for mystery box season, and you will get the early, like last year retrospective, and hopefully gives you some guidance on where to go. Anyway, we got a great show. Obviously, we're going to get you ready for MVP. We're going to make our picks, but before we do that, we're going to talk with Mike Sullivan from the PDGA about the rule changes for 2025. They just announced kind of like the final set of what the rule changes are going to be following the public comment period. So we talked about the rule changes, but some stuff is changing. For instance, timeouts, they're giving them this, they're cutting them. Not happening. They're not doing it. Apparently people were really mad about it. A lot of negative feedback. So we'll talk to Mike about that and kind of how they do this rule process and some of the other interesting rules for next year. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Mike Sullivan joins us to talk PDGA Rules 2025. Stay with us. It's the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Well, the standard and deluxe Rufuses are going to be winding down, and moving forward, Pound is only going to be offering the double convertible version of the Rufus. But to use up the last of the deluxe Rufus fabric, Pound is releasing several small runs of the super deluxe Rufus. They have an additional upper detail pocket, upgraded mesh and shoulder pads, and two-tone zippers. You got to grab one of these before they're gone for good. So go to pounddiscgolf.com and grab yourself a super deluxe Rufus today. The aches and pains of age can creep up on you quickly. That doesn't mean you have to suffer in silence. Our sponsor, Sunset Lake CBD, has just what you need to soothe your aching joints and calm down those sore spots. As hemp farmers, the folks at Sunset Lake know what it means to be sore after a long day in the fields. That's why they make their products with top shelf ingredients, including CBD they grow themselves. From salves and rubs to gummies and tinctures, Sunset Lake CBD has everything you need to find relief at the end of your day. So if you're out for a long day of disc golf, and I've had this myself, you carrying the bag, maybe playing 2 rounds in a day, and you're getting up in age a little bit, need a little bit of Sunset Lake CBD, like a salve on your back after a long day of disc golf. I'll tell you what, feels amazing. You go to Sunset Lake CBD, offering listeners 20% off all orders if you use code UPSHOT at checkout. So sunsetlakecbd.com, use code UPSHOT at checkout. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown. Joining us now on the Upshot is Mike Sullivan. He's the Director of Policy and Compliance at the PDGA. Mike, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. It's great to have you on. Where are you right now? It looks like you're standing up. I feel like we're talking to you from the, something like undisclosed location.
I'm in my basement in my office / guest room, hiding the guest bed from you with these flags I pulled out of the garage. This is my standing desk. As
you should have put a bed sheet up, though. You got to get that disc golf energy.
Yeah, no comment.
So, what does the Director of Policy and Compliance do?
So, yeah, I do a lot of things. What our department was, we stood it up in 2023 because we said we needed a central set of people who were going to manage the rulemaking process, which can be complicated, manage the disciplinary process, and sort of create the PDGA voice when it comes to policy. So when we write different policies about different things, whether that's an official rule of disc golf, whether that's a provision in the competition manual, or a standalone policy, we want the PDGA to speak with one voice, with sort of one analytical framework. And so it was originally Steve Gans as the director and me as what we called the senior policy and compliance officer. And in addition, we do, data privacy and protection, GDPR compliance. And now that I'm the director, I have reactivated my law license, which I'd gone on associate status with the bar just before the pandemic. I was going to be a school teacher and ended up being a PDGA employee instead. It's a different story for a different time. But reactivated my law license and became our general counsel as of March. So I'm also doing state law compliance, regulatory compliance, all that sort of stuff. So we are kind of the PDGA's law firm, as it were.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have you on today to talk a little bit about the new rules for 2025. We discussed them on the podcast a couple of months ago, or at least a few weeks ago, and then they went into a public comment period.
Yes.
That public comment period is now concluded, and as of about 18 hours ago, the new changes based on the comments have been posted to the PDGA website.
Yep.
So this is perfect timing.
Yeah.
What I guess obviously it's good to get feedback from players and TDs and whoever else is involved in the disc golf community on rules. What exactly is the rules process? Like, is it the PDGA kind of sits down and thinks about, like, these are things we think we should change, and then you ask everybody else what they think about the rules you've proposed? Or is there like you're taking comments in during the year and then you formalize those into rules and then you have this secondary review period? I guess I'm just curious how the rules get made.
So yes, first of all, both of those things. So we do take constant feedback from members. Members send us emails. They would send the rules committee emails. They would send the competition committee emails and say, this is a problem I see in our sport, or this is a rule that I don't think is working properly. At the same time, committee members are looking for those things and staff are looking for those things. We get a lot of great feedback from our event support folks because they deal with every C and B tier that goes on and has a difficulty. That, they'll call the helpline, they'll send it an email. Those guys are great at making sure they're helping TDs on the ground. And then our ONL staff go on the majors and who have helped at DGPT events here and there. They're able to identify things at the top level of the game that concerns. And so whether it comes from members, whether it comes from committee, whether it comes from staff, what happens is we go to what we are now calling RRAC, which is the Rules and Regulations Advisory Committee. This is a combination of the Rules and Competition Committee. We've made this change very recently. Because so many things in one document affect the other, having them be two siloed committees was no longer fit for purpose. We had to go ahead and combine them so that we could get that dialogue going from the beginning. Mike Krupika, longtime rules chair, has become the chair of that committee. And we're really pleased with with how it seems to be working so far as we look toward 2026. Anyway, the committee will go, okay, here's the problem. What do we think the solution to the problem is? And in this committee, we have TDs, we have players, we have state coordinators, we have people from different aspects of the sport who can look at rules and regulations in a different way. They go, okay, policy and compliance, here's what we think the solution is. Policy and compliance, which is me and Robert Leonard at this time, we draft the statutory language, what we call the legislative language, says this is what the rule looks like. And then it goes into several review periods. The very first review period is back to the committee. Committee, do you think this solves the problem? And the committee says, yes, we think this solves the problem. We go to the staff. And by staff, I mean not everybody, but EST, ONL, policy and compliance, the people who deal with events on the ground, the people who are writing the language. We all look at the language. We try to poke holes in it. What are we missing? What doesn't this cover? What are the edge cases? Are those edge cases real things we need to be worried about? Are we worried too much about, it's often said you can't legislate against bad faith, for example. So, if someone's going to do something intentionally wrong, there's a different rule for that. They should be DQ'd, right? So let's not worry about that. Let's worry about innocent mistakes. And once we're happy with it, that's when it goes to, in my opinion, the most important evaluation, which is putting it to the members for public comment. And we've been trying to do that a little earlier every year since we started this process. I think the first one was probably in August of 2021 or 2022, and now we're putting it out in early June, which is great because that gives the members a lot of time to respond. It gives us a lot of time to adjust and catalog and say, okay, let's really think about this. And then PNC, Robert and I, look at these things and say, okay, which of these things do we think are serious concerns and what are our solutions? And then we go back to committees and to staff and say, these are our proposed fixes. What do you think? And that's how it works. Oh, I'm sorry. And we have lucky to have Brian and Phil and Jeff from DGPT in the staff portion of the review as well. They get to take a look at it so they can comment on things that affect the Pro Tour. So yeah, that's we've been building this process for a number of years. I'm really pleased with how it's working now. I think we got some extremely valuable feedback this time. Over 90 people submitted over 160 comments. So that was really great.
I'd like to pivot to one of those rules and comments.
Yeah.
And that's the timeouts section.
Oh man, I didn't think you were going to ask me about that one.
Oh, I know. I'm sure you're shocked here. 802.03. This is where we had proposed the 2 timeouts for 30-second violations
Yeah.
I'll just read the first two sentences. The feedback to this proposed change was overwhelmingly negative and raised concerns about whether it be an effective solution. This proposal will not be implemented for 2025. Do you want to tell us
Right.
a little bit about this one in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So the feedback, as it says, negative in a number of ways. Negative in this is not fit for purpose. It doesn't, solve the problem. It's complicated. It's hard to understand. It's hard to implement. Players aren't calling time violations. Why would they enforce time extension violations or timeout violations? And so it just got us thinking. It said, okay, well, what's the problem here? Are we really, which problem are we thinking about? Because there's two problems, right? Number one is we have a 30-second clock that is often not enforced at the highest level by the players on other players. And that's an enforcement problem. But there's another problem, which may or may not be directly related, which is pace of play at big events. And we said to ourselves, do we have the data? Do we really know that a guy who's taken 45 seconds on a putt or a lady who's taken 60 seconds because she's stuck in the woods and needs to find a way out, that's what's causing these backups? Do we know that for sure? Or do we maybe have a mismatch between the sort of aperture of tee times, how far apart tee times are spaced, and the average time it takes to complete a hole on a course? Do we maybe have a 12-minute tee time at a course that takes 14 minutes to play each hole? We don't know that. So until we know that, we don't know what problem we're solving. If we don't know what problem we're solving, then we ought not posit a solution. And so we said, okay, we're just going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to leverage StatMando, and we're going to find the answers to these questions first. And if what we find out is this is primarily a mismatch between tee times and how long it takes to play a hole, then let's fix that problem and see what happens. And if that problem fixes most of it and pace of play fixes the rest, do we need a 30-second clock? Can we go PGA model? Does that solve the enforcement problem in that this rule wasn't, didn't need to be implemented in the first place? But we don't know what we don't know. So we just said, listen, we just put everything on hold and let's get that data first and see if we're even addressing the correct problem here.
Yeah, I mean, it's on some courses, I think it's clear that the standard time between, the next tee off is not enough, because you get to a particular hole that's hard or has lots of brutal woods without OB, and people are just slog fest and they're throwing a lot of shots. And so it starts to slow down, and then it's like a traffic jam, and it ends up being a big backup, 3-4 card backup.
That's right.
We see that, like, Northwood Black comes to mind right away for me. Josh smiles because, of course, he was thinking the same thing.
I was like, what course could Charlie possibly be talking about?
So that's one thing. But I do think we see that there are certain cards that get really slow, and that clearly has to do with pace of play specifically. Yeah. And I feel like, and I'm curious what you think from a rules perspective, it does feel like we are seeing more time enforcement this year, not from players who basically never do anything to enforce time, but from PDGA officials or DGPT officials who are coming out to a card and they're saying, time warning.
I put a card on the clock at New London at Worlds this year. I mean,
nice.
Just what needs to happen sometimes if you're too far behind.
Sure. I think we certainly agree. It does feel, though, that there is sort of like a selective, there's kind of targeting happening right now. Like, Gannon Buhr has complained about the fact that he's getting time warned when other players on his card are taking equal or more time than him. And I think that, sort of anecdotally, I kind of agree with that. Maybe it doesn't matter because Gannon is still sometimes breaking the rules. So, like, you're going to break the rules, you're going to get time warned, and you have a reputation. So too bad for you. But how do you see that from like a kind of like a broader rules perspective? How do we do this better than sort of the ad hoc nature that it feels like right now is happening, with time warnings sort of happening sometimes, but only at particular tournaments with particular marshals?
I mean, it's a resources problem, right? And so there's two aspects there. First of all, we do see this phenomenon in every sport. You've got some players in the NFL who are known to play a little dirtier, and if they get near a helmet to helmet hit, they're going to get the flag every time. Whereas somebody else who maybe doesn't have that reputation can get close and not draw a flag. And that's because officiating can never be perfect. And it's also a resources problem. And we simply do not have a marshal to go with every card. And if we hired a marshal to go with every card, I'm not sure the players would enjoy the effect on the purse. Because, we do, if you want professional officials, you have to pay them. But yeah, I'm not sure that there's a legislative solution to that kind of enforcement problem. That all we can really do is make the best crafted rule possible that actually addresses the problems at play, and then just hope that enforcement is as good as we can make it. Because there's nothing I can write in a rule that can force a marshal to enforce in a certain way. All we can do is create the best rule we can create.
Gannon has to wear a shock collar, and if he goes over 30 seconds, put it in the rule book.
Listen,
I'm gonna Gannon's a good guy. I'm gonna politely decline to put any shock collar rules for him or anyone else. But I appreciate the idea.
I will say, Gannon complaining about him getting called and not other people is like him driving a red Maserati with the license plate says "Catch me if you can," complaining to the officer he got pulled over for doing 100 because the Honda Civic was doing 84. Like that's what it feels like to me when Gannon complains about time violations.
I'm not going to comment on enforcement.
So, what other? I looked through these rules in this public comment. It seems like a lot of them were, besides that time violation, wording, clarity, just making sure that it's kind of saying what we wanted it to say at the end. Are there any other notable ones from the public comment that you wanted to bring up right now that you saw big tweaks that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I think the two that I really would like people to be aware of. One is the 2.01 qualifications. People were really concerned. So this is the idea here is that if you don't have a PDGA number and you're finishing first in silver or whatever at your monthlies, and you sign up for your first PDGA tournament in MA4, and I as your TD, like, you're at least 880 rated. Like, there's no way you should be playing an MA4 that caps at 849. You got to play MA3. We want to empower TDs to do that for people who don't have a rating and have a PDGA number. They can play wherever they wish, but somebody who is not a member at all, TDs can place those folks where it's appropriate. And the original rule we had was overly broad. So we've gone ahead and made sure that it's really clear. You can't force somebody to play pro. If they're 51, you can't say you can't play MA50. But in the ratings-based divisions, which are the color divisions, and then MA2, MA3, MA4, FA2, FA3, FA4. Somebody playing in those, you're the TD, you know their skill level is inappropriate to the level of competition. You can move them. And this is to protect PDGA members, And the solution to this, if you don't like it, is a one-time joining the PDGA, you have a number, and this rule doesn't apply to you anymore. That's it.
You get one shot.
It's the smallest possible barrier to entry, a single purchase of a PDGA membership, and then you have the ability to play anywhere you're eligible.
I wanted to ask about a couple other things. Did you have another one you wanted to point out first?
Yeah, the True Am change. There are one thing that isn't here because it was in the original and people liked it. I just want to make sure I amplify this. Is that we have changed the trophy schedule for true amateur events so that solo divisions no longer need to have a trophy. If you're a TD and you have a solo division, you can offer one, but you don't have to. And what we're hoping is that this encourages TDs to run more solo divisions for women's and age-based and junior divisions because there's essentially no financial hit for doing so. And then here we've also given them. You can do a cutoff up to 2 weeks before the event saying these are the numbers we're going to use for trophies. If you sign up, 3 of you sign up for MA60 the week before the event, I'm sorry, your division's just not going to have a trophy because you signed up too late.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's very logical. All right. So one I want to ask about is spotters. And this is not, this is more clerical in nature, but basically I'll just read the rule as it's being reconstructed. Generally, the ruling of a tournament spotter does not supersede the ruling of the group. However, the TD may grant spotters who are certified officials limited authority to act as a tournament official for one or more specific types of ruling, such as determining where a disc was last in bounds.
Yes.
So, I'm not sure that I have seen this where I've seen a spotter who appeared to have overruling power over the card, because one of the biggest things that I have seen this year commentating on disc golf is players basically just making up where the disc went out of was last crossed in, and just like being completely wrong and making it an assessment from 350 feet away when there was a spotter standing right there who saw, and they say, no, you didn't cross in. And then the card's like, no, I crossed in. And I think it's frustrating for fans to see that happening. Of course, I'm talking about Pro Tour stuff. Is this a change to the rules that the spotters can now have this authority, or is this something that's been on the rule books but just hasn't typically been used a lot? I guess.
So yes
question.
and no. A tournament director could make whoever they wanted a tournament official. As long as you're a certified official, you're a current member, you can be a tournament official. So TD could always say, spotter, you are an official and you can make calls. What this change does is it says, if you've got somebody you want their only job to be, I'm sitting at a blind corner that has OB, and my job is to tell the players where they went out. But you don't want them to get overzealous and start calling stance violations or time violations. Then you can give them limited authority. So the limited authority piece is new. You can say, listen, you're a certified official for the purpose of where these discs go out. You are not a certified official for purposes of, calling courtesy violations without a second, or calling stance violations or time violations or anything else on the card. You are simply there to help the group make a determination about their lie and tell them, you determine your lie because this is where you went out. This is an official ruling. Mark your lie accordingly. And then if the group wants to appeal, they can appeal.
Does the officials certification process include how to run around and dance with the flags?
Not currently.
Okay.
It's on the whiteboard.
We should make sure to get that.
It's on the whiteboard. It's under consideration.
Okay, thank you.
In the case of an appeal process, would that be one where players play provisional, where they play both where the spotter indicates and where they think it went out, and then they appeal to the tournament director?
That's certainly what I would.
What would the process?
That's certainly what I would do in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yes.
This makes sense, but I'm wondering why this was needed. At PDGA sanctioned events, bathrooms are now required. This is not new, but there is a new language. It must be stocked and serviced and in working order.
So bathrooms required is new, but this is
it is new. Okay.
So that the whole piece is new, and then this is the new piece to the new piece. Because we got some feedback. The feedback for this was nearly universally positive. We did have, I think my favorite piece of feedback we got was that this would ruin the romanticism of using your natural body processes in a natural setting, which which
surely came from a dude.
I'm not going to say who it came from. It did not come from me, because people will suspect. People who remember my board candidacy video about liking to pee in the woods will probably suspect that this was my feedback, but it was not. That's all I'll tell you. Not my feedback. That we did say, listen, we have TDs who rent facilities and it's there all week, and by the time tournament day comes around, it's full and not serviced, or the parks around here don't service these things regularly. And that was also a point of concern from a few TDs who said, hey, listen, what do I do if the parks don't clean the restrooms? I can't control the parks. So we said, you have the power to take money for a restroom out of the gross entry fee before you determine payout. What I do in these cases is I rent my own restroom and I put a combination lock on it.
Yep.
So that, random park goers aren't using it and it stays clean for the event. Right. But yeah, so we had a few people say, hey, can we please just make it a requirement that the thing be clean? And we said, I mean, that makes sense. Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, you could check the technical box, but
That's right. That's right.
it's
And
not
I
actually
know
using the bathroom.
this kind of goes to something that we were talking about before we started here, Charlie, about not being able to legislate against bad faith. But here's a space where we can at least legislate against maybe I don't want to call it laziness, but perhaps box checking rather than thinking about what the rule is for.
Uh,
Go ahead, Josh.
I wanted to follow up on one that I didn't see in the public comment side,
Sure.
but I am a little bit curious about. This is considered a minor change. It's 801.02 with allowing self-call violations without confirmation.
Yes.
And this one just explicitly says that a player can self-call and does not need to be confirmed unless objected to by a player in the group or by a tournament official. So my question is, like, if I were to call a violation on myself,
Yep.
if odds are, if they are not objecting, I'm sure somebody on my card would second it. So I guess I'm just curious why this clarification. Like, you say that it comes from complaints from things that you see. So I'm curious what sparked this rule change.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just trying to normalize enforcement, right? Trying to normalize, make the call, accept the call, move on, right? If no one was paying attention, and I know I stepped on my disc when I threw, I should be able to call myself, and it shouldn't be dependent on my card mates paying attention if I know I broke a rule, right? Like that's kind of the classic example. Everybody else is kind of looking around, or there's a cool mushroom people are Instagramming, and I'm throwing my upshot. See what I did there? Upshot. And I step on my disc. Then I should just be able to hey guys, I stepped on my disc. It's a stance violation. I'm assessing myself a penalty, and that should be fine. I mean, that's just one of the things that should be normal, should be encouraged as we continue to sort of create a culture of self-enforcement. Right?
Yeah. Again, this is sort of niche, but I'm curious about this. So the public comment period made it so that now hot stamps are removable. That's an allowed modification to a disc after production, which makes sense. Lots of people like to wipe stamps and do dyes and things like that. But I was curious because etching, carving, or engraving the disc has been struck as something that, we used to make. It was originally saying that would make the disc illegal. You couldn't use it. But now that's not in there anymore. Why not?
The actual answer for that one is that because tech standards told us that they don't want it to be eliminated anymore. They want to open the door to laser engraving of discs if people want to laser engrave their name into it. And again, the disc still needs to be in spec, right?
Right.
So if you laser engrave it so hard there are holes in it, then it's not legal.
Sure.
But if you etch your name in it or a design, or if a manufacturer does a run and they forget to etch the name of the disc onto it and they have to do it post-production, we want those things to be permissible. And Tech Standards has determined that so long as the disc doesn't come out of spec, we can kind of loosen this and lean into the creativity and especially the artistic creativity that is all over in the sport. It's one of my favorite things about disc golf, actually. And so, the answer is that Homburg and Downs and Krupika talked about it and said, let's let people do this. Let's see where it goes and let's see what our folks can do with this.
So was it illegal before to wipe a stamp?
It was not illegal before to wipe a stamp. There were at least was not explicitly illegal. I don't think it was either specifically allowed or disallowed, which I would say that cuts to allowed. But there were questions about third-party hot stamping of discs. So non-manufacturer hot stamping of discs, is that adding a material of detectable thickness? Under the rule as it stands today, arguably that answer is yes. We said, well, then we probably ought to reevaluate this rule. Again, the great flourishing artistic creativity in disc golf is something we like and want to encourage. So we said, okay, let's allow hot stamps. And then someone's like, hey, wait, if you're going to mention hot stamps and you're going to say it's okay to put them on, you should probably say it's okay to take them off. And we're like, oh, yeah,
Got it.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Cool.
I would lose my mind if somebody tried to call me for a white stamp disc. I would lose it. So maybe this is a good, maybe it's necessary to have that in there.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard to picture people calling these things, but you want the rules to address situations that could come up, as long as they're not too fanciful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I want to ask one quick question while we've got you about a rule that was not changed this year, but has been changed recently. It's in the same section about intentionally deforming a disc such that it is not circular, saucer-like configuration.
Yes.
Why did we get rid of the baseball throw putt where they fold the putter to toss it in?
I think I'm pretty sure the board of directors sort of discussed this rule. As I recall, that was a direct from the rules committee to the board. And it was sort of a philosophical matter of, aren't we really playing a Frisbee sport? Shouldn't we be making Frisbee moves and Frisbee throws? And I think the other side of that was, well, remember the original, flip, fly straight, invent games, be creative ethos. I think those two forces were sort of in tension in evaluating that. And I think, hey, listen, at the end of the day, this is a disc sport and we want to be throwing flying discs one out.
My last question is also about a rule that has changed recently, but not this year. How would you assess the changes to mandatory rules with the vertical plane? It does seem like sometimes that still gets confused, or it's like not well marked by TDs, even at the Pro Tour level. I'm curious if you think that's working well compared to how the rule used to apply.
Certainly simpler than any previous iteration of the rule. I mean, and I think part of the problem is that people's conception of that rule did not update as the rule updated. When we promulgated that change, a lot of the feedback we got made it really evident that people were thinking of a rule that hadn't existed since 2012, which is a past the mandatory no longer exists rule. And that hadn't been the case for a decade when we made this change. The problems with the prior rule were that there were so many conditions that it got confusing. So, for example, in the old rule, if the disc made the mandatory, rolled back along the bad side, you then got a free throw back over the bad side, because any disc that crosses the line in more than once or in more than one direction is fine. And so we said, well, if you're not supposed to throw the disc that way, why are we letting people throw the disc that way? And that's what sort of led to this. I go, why don't we just have a plane that if you break it, regardless of the direction, it's bad? Because if I don't want you throwing here, if I don't want a disc flying over this area this way, why do I want a disc flying over the area this way? I just don't want a disc flying over this area. Whether I'm coming backwards over the playground or throwing over the playground, it's not good. And giving me permission to throw over the playground when I already botched a shot is also not good, right? That's the other thing. You miss the Mando and hit the tree and come back in the 2018 to 2021 rule, you get to throw over the playground.
Right.
Like that. The rule worked when things didn't get weird. And it definitely did not work at all and was arguably dangerous for safety Mandos when things did get weird. Now, the current rule do I love that you can hit a tree, roll back, and then you have to go to the drop zone? I mean, I get why people are upset. But also, most of the time when that happens, imagine what would happen if it was unidirectional. Okay, so I make the Mando, I hit a tree, and I roll on over here. Here's the line. Right? I'm on the good side, safe side. And let's say the rule says because I broke it coming this way, there's no penalty. but I still have to play it as it lies. So now I'm doing some sort of like, scuba shot or, big flick around the Mando to try and make it at a weird angle and probably land where the drop zone is.
You're more or less taking a stroke anyway.
I'm gonna be through. I mean, there are some, if you roll all the way around and you could have had a clean shot, that's great. It stinks. Sorry. Luck is part of the game. Sometimes we play outside on uneven surfaces with lots of obstacles, and sometimes you just get a bad kick, and that happens. But rules need to be written for like the 90% of cases, not the 10% of cases.
Great explanation. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to see the new rules here. Are there any rules that you feel like are kind of in the hopper that are still being worked on that you feel like are kind of like a bigger deal that we might see in 2026?
Nothing that we're ready to talk about. I don't think there's anything fully baked yet at this point. We're sort of, nothing that I think we're really ready to discuss yet.
Okay. Well, Mike Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Hey, Charlie, Josh, thank you so much.
Great to have you. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upshot. And before we chat about Mike Sullivan, I have a bone to pick with you now that I have the chance. You were killing me for not knowing that. 2015 Pro Tour. The Pro Tour started in 2016, Josh.
Shoot.
It will be the 10th year of the Pro Tour in 2025 because you start from 2016. So you know what, Josh?
Got it. You're right.
I knew it all
Sorry.
along.
Charlie, you can have your job back. You can commentate again. I'm sorry.
But anyway, I am happy to do a look back of the previous decade. And we can just be like 2016 to 2025 is the decade, which counts, right?
Yeah. We'll figure it
out. Mike Sullivan, he was great. I feel like it's really nice to have like people who are really focused just on like making the rules as good as they can be.
I think it's also just such a natural pairing with like, the PDGA's in-house counsel, because it's an opportunity for like, number one, I think Mike, I didn't know he's an attorney, but as an attorney, I like the idea, the fact that we have someone who does legal writing as the one who's looking over and making sure that, does this say what it's supposed to say? And I think it's a natural pairing. I love this idea of like the competition and rules committee pairing. This makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a process that is getting better and improving, and it's very much showing, because I think some of the rules that have been implemented are clearly addressing those concerns and requests that people have put in. And so it feels genuine, not just like your comment will be answered in the order that is received kind of thing.
All right. Well, it's time to talk MVP Open. This has been an interesting tournament. Obviously, Maple Hill, well loved. Some changes this year. Various things, like the basket on hole 1. I was watching Casey White's walkthrough of the course. The basket on hole 1 used to be kind of tight to the OB on the like back edge of the green. It's now been moved like much more towards the middle. And as a result, like if you just get in through that triple Mando and you stay in bounds, you're probably going to have a circle 1 putt pretty comfortably. And like, it's not nearly as scary as it used to be. So that's an interesting change. The change on hole 6, the basket is not only closer to the wall, it's like also tucked behind some trees. Pretty interesting spot for that. Like it's going to make some of the putting a lot trickier because you have to not only not putt it out of bounds, but you have to make sure that you're on the good side of those trees.
Yeah. Another nice touch, not have to do with much competition. Casey White showed on his vlog that the inside of the Triple Mando walls have plaques with the winners' names and years from previous iterations of this tournament. Casey White says that this was his idea. I don't know if anyone else called Steve Dodge, but I love it. I think it's such a nice touch, and I also like that it's like, and Steve talked about this, but it's very it's aesthetically pleasing and well done. It's not like they're like scratched in on the front side of it with a pocket knife. Like they're classy. They look good, and I appreciate that. So I think it was a very well done addition to the course.
Before we talk more MVP, I don't want to forget, so I want to do it right now. We had the Tim Selinsky U.S. Masters, which is a PDGA major for the old folks. Yeah, I said it. I'm sorry. Josh, can you break down for us who took down the U.S. Masters this year?
Yeah, every year it's funny because you look at these age protected like divisions, and you start seeing more
divisions.
age based. Excuse me. And you see names that like not that long ago you were seeing on Jomez, and so it's kind of fun to see. In MP40, this is obviously the most competitive division. Scott Conway takes the win at 35 under, beating out Michael Johansson and Kale Leviska, who are 34 and 33 under. They pretty much separate themselves from the field. So big win for Scott there. FP40, Sarah Hokum goes to a playoff with Jennifer Allen. A 4-hole playoff. Sarah Hokum wins it out and is able to take that down. They separated themselves by almost 20 strokes over third place Zoe Andike. MP50, Johnny McRae beats out Barry Schultz. What a story. Johnny McRae back at it, playing great, takes down the win in the playoff.
Wasn't he actively dead for like a minute or something? Didn't he say that when we interviewed him?
Yes.
That is crazy, man. And then he's back, and now he's winning again.
Yeah. So good for Johnny. Blaine Faulkner wins an MP55. FP55, Elaine King takes down the win. MP60, Eric Rainey blows out the field for the win. FP60, Kathy Hardiman wins in a playoff over Lori Cloys Chupa. MP65, Bobby Jones gets the win by a stroke. MP70, Randy Beers wins out. FP70, Michelle Marini gets the win. MP80, Pete May, Cowboy Hat Pete, still slinging and gets another win.
Let's go, baby.
Listen, there are not, like, if they were not touring players, there are not many that I personally can recognize by sight from these divisions. Pete May is one that I can. Pete May gets the win in MP80. So cool. MA40, Bradley Bushman gets the win. FA40, Janae Cheney wins it. MA50, Milton Flynn. FA50, Christy Holdbrooks. MA55, James Hustis. FA55, Kimberly Adams. MA60, Tom Raub. FA60, Janet Cranshaw wins. MA65 is George Bodriga. FA65, Donna Stanley. MA70, Mark Hauser. And MA75, Donald Parker. Congratulations to all the winners.
Congrats, everybody. All right, MVP. I want to point out we have gone now 4 years in a row without a repeat winner in either division. So last year, Matty O and Haley King took it down. 2022 is Simon Lizotte and Natalie Ryan. 2021, Adam Hammis and Katrina Allen. And in 2020, Paul Macbeth and Paige Pierce. They did repeat, both of them, from their 2019 victories. But will we go 5 for 5 with new, I won't want to say first-time winners necessarily, but not repeating winners? I think we might. I think we might too. I think the odds is that we won't, because like even if somebody who's won before, like Ricky, wins, he hasn't won since 2017. Kristen has never won here. Owen has never won here. I mean, you name it, right? Holland has never won. Like in FPO, it feels more likely than not that we're going to have a first-time winner because, Paige not at the level right now. Katrina not playing. Sure, Haley could go off. I mean, you never know when Haley's going to go off.
Yes.
Right? But like the top players in FPO have never won this tournament.
Yeah.
Evelina, Silva. I don't think Silva's ever played this tournament.
And listen, it makes sense. It's a 4-round tournament in the woods. We don't do that very often on the Pro Tour. Most of our wooded courses are either 3-round tournaments or they are combined in a major with other, in Worlds, for example, with more open courses. And so it's one that definitely is going. I mean, MVP is unique in that sense. It elevates talent that doesn't always get elevated. But I really think that the odds this year are heavily favored towards a couple of favorites. I mean, I guess they always are, but it feels like those favorites could really keep that streak going in this year more so than even previous years.
Yeah. Obviously, the course, other than the changes we discussed yesterday with Steve, largely remains what you know.
Yep.
They kind of like recarved that hole off the parallel to the path instead of on the path. Otherwise, this is very similar course to how it's been for the last however many years. So, it's a classic. It's an absolute classic.
It is.
I think, like I said yesterday, I want to see more pin positions. I want to see more holes have alternate pin positions. And I, despite what I said yesterday about how, carving a hole and changing the par, for instance, like they did here, right? They're changing the par on both of their alternate pin position holes.
Mm-hmm.
There are holes where I think you could just simply move the basket and change the hole or the shot enough to make it interesting.
Yep.
Like on the water carry holes, I feel like you can move the basket 20 feet and like get a different type of hole. Like the shot might be similar, but where you want to land, how dangerous the putt is, kind of like how they changed the pin position on hole 17 at USDGC. It's like
exactly
it's different enough to be interesting.
Yep, it is, and I think that's spot on because the hole 8 honestly could be a fundamentally different hole if you brought that basket closer to the water. Or pushed it back against the fence more, or tucked it in behind one of the trees on the sides. Fundamentally changes the way the players are going to approach the putt and other parts of that hole. So I completely agree. And here's the thing: I would like at least 6 holes on every course to have alternate pin positions, where 3 of them are drastic and 3 of them can just be more subtle. To change the green a little bit, and that would be a big difference. That would be a lot. That'd be a big deal. So that's what I'd like to start seeing in the near future.
It would be cool.
Yeah.
Do we have more to say about MVP Open?
I've got one note. It's a little bit of a mulligan that I need to take from our discussion about Pro Tour points. Cole Redallen is registered for this event. So we had talked about him kind of where he's floating with the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championships. He is going to be playing this event, though. And so I think that even if he doesn't play super well, it was already a pretty difficult stretch to catch him. Him playing, I think, just makes that more so. But that was the big note in terms of registration that I had noticed. Otherwise, I mean, you really got the full slate of players here, because it's a playoff event. It's worth lots of points. Can't drop it, including lots of European names on the MPO side. So should be a good weekend.
All right, so just to run it down: Vinyl Makula, Cole Redallen, Mason Ford, Robert Burridge, Emerson Keith, Luke Humphreys are in. Looking to get in with an opportunity to do so with a good weekend: Bradley Williams, Ezra Aderhold, Jake Hebenheimer, Ben Calloway, and maybe Alden Harris. Wait, Alden's GMC points aren't listed here? What's up with that?
Where are you looking?
Oh, never mind.
Okay.
I was in the wrong row. Simple mistake.
Yes.
Immediate mulligan.
But Alden needs another probably top 10, if not top 5, in order to make this happen.
Yep. Any of those guys I just listed could, with a good weekend, get in. So that's the MPO list. The FPO list, again, I'll give you the those who are in. Really, we're talking about Lisa Fakis and Hannah Wynn as in. Emily Weatherman is at 18, but she's got a spot clinched no matter what. And then looking to get in, Stacy Kiefer, Ellie Mittling, and that's basically it, unless Jessica Weiss,
and
Stacey
honestly,
Ronsley, Allie Smith, they would have to go crazy.
Lisa's probably not dropping out either,
Right.
being 90 points ahead. So
we're really talking about one of Hannah Wynn, Stacey Kiefer, Ellie Mittling.
Yep. They are functionally the same. 15-point difference. That's, one of them gets a top 10. Basically wraps.
Some people in the Discord, in the Ulti World Disc Golf Discord, saying they should put those players together on a card for the whole tournament.
I love it.
Would you support that?
Absolutely. And I would support it being put being like your second or third feature card
100%.
every week, every day.
100%.
I don't care where they're at in the tournament.
Like let's acknowledge that this is an entertainment product, and like let's watch the cut line. Like that's very interesting. But if they're on 3 different cards in the middle of the pack, it's going to be really difficult for the broadcast to really show them. We're going to probably just see like the leaderboard a lot, which is fine. But I would love to see them throw shots, especially down the stretch.
Love that idea. Call it the bubble.
Maybe
the bubble card.
Bubble card.
Yeah, the bubble card.
Like,
and
I mean, they
do it on both
rules.
Divisions. Yeah,
yes,
right.
100%.
And you put the top 2 and bottom 2 with a little bit of flexibility, but that's kind of the 2 above the line, 2 below the line. Call it the bubble card. They play together the entire tournament, and they're always the third card out. Love it.
It would be epic. Anyway, maybe another time. Let's get to our picks. It is time. Josh,
get your chalkboard out, Charlie.
Yeah. Do I even need to ask? Who you taking in FPO?
All right, third place, I've got Silva. Silva has not played here, but has clearly demonstrated that she is a top Woods player. She excelled, and honestly, if you look, she was right in like kind of the second place pack with a lot of the other players at Brewster Ridge this past weekend. So I think her performances in Europe have demonstrated why I think she's going to be a solid pick this weekend. Can't doubt the dog. I shouldn't have doubted the dog. I'm done doubting the dog. I put Owen Scoggins back in. Owen on podium last year also really was the top player at Brewster Ridge by going, I think it was 15 down, which was the best of anybody at Brewster Ridge specifically last weekend. And listen, if Owen is skipping Masters events to stay at DGPT events, she's there to win it. So, but I have her in the second place, but my win, I give it to Kristen. She's been second place 2 years in a row, once in a playoff and once by blowing it on hole 18 because she had a stroke lead over Haley going into it last year. This is her year. I think she closes it out and sweeps the playoff events.
I have a very similar looking podium, but I have Evelina in my 3 spot. She's had success here in the past. I was looking at her GMC results because I was like, why didn't she play better? And basically she just didn't throw it that good. Like the putting wasn't great, but it was like fine. It was fine enough. But she just was like missing too many fairways. So I'm not sure that necessarily bodes well, but I also think that I expect her to regress to her mean, which is that she's the best thrower on tour. So happy to have her on my podium. I've got Owen in my 2 spot. Owen has played great here in the past, and she just looks fantastic right now. Like she's once again maybe playing the best disc golf of her career. It's really unbelievable. And I'm also taking Kristen to win. This is not pure gamesmanship because at this point I should just match Josh's podiums if I want to be smart. But I'm not doing that. I just think like I wanted to be like, I'm going to pick Silva. Like she's going to get the revenge. I can't do it. Like Kristen just wins and people
finds a way every time.
Yes. And I think she's going to extra want this one because she hasn't won it yet.
I think so too. Yeah.
In MPO, in my 3 spot, I have to give the man a podium spot right now, Gannon Burr. This hasn't really been his tournament, so I'm like a little hesitant. But on the other hand, when you're playing as red hot as he is, like I don't really want to fade that too much. So I'm only giving him a podium spot. I'm not giving him the win. In the 2 spot, I've got Ricky, who's just long had success here at MVP and is also just absolutely on fire this season. But I'm going to go a little bit out of the box here with my winner pick. I'm taking Eagle McMahon.
Oh, okay.
Home MVP sponsored tournament in the Northeast. He's starting to look right. he played pretty damn good this past week at GMC.
He did. He absolutely did.
And he said in an Instagram post that he basically felt great about his game with a couple of like bad breaks didn't go his way. Really, he just had a bad round 3 at Brewster. If the disc bounce is right for him this weekend, I love his chances to get what would be his first win of the season, but also just feel like it would reestablish him. And my God, MVP would sell so many Frisbees if he won.
Yes, they would. Get your Wind Dragon ready to be side, Charlie. I also have Eagle on my podium. I've got him in the 3 spot though. I did not know you were picking Eagle. I picked him for all the same reasons, and I give him the podium spot. But I think it would be silly to go away from what is the established pattern of play right now, which is Ricky plays really well and gets himself second place, and Gannon blows everybody out of the water because it's a 4-round tournament. The man has only lost 1 4-round tournament all year. I'm not willing to pick against that. I get that. The way he's playing, the fact he wins at 4 rounds, and coming off of a wooded track and played well at Brewster as well, I really think Gannon's just going to keep cleaning house, and he's going to put together a special season.
All right. Well, it's hard to argue against it. Josh with the chalk. Thank you for delivering us some sidewalk chalk, Josh.
You're welcome. It worked last week, so
let's get an over-under this week. I feel like we've been neglecting the over-under campaign. Oh, we already have one. Never mind. We're good. We already have one.
Yeah, it's Eagles on
Eagles
9.
on the par 5. There's 2 rounds.
Yeah.
You're on the over. I'm on the
I'm saying 1 or more. Yeah.
Okay.
One guy is going to accidentally throw it in. Like, even if it's not an earned eagle, it's going to happen.
An eagle's an eagle. All right.
An eagle.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with you on Sunday with our Inside the Circle live Rapid Reacts in our Discord. You can join us for that. Just get yourself a subscription at discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. It's less than $4 per month. And if you sign up now, you're going to get that. All of our USDGC Throw Pink Rapid Reacts every day, and Tour Championship as well. So the season is coming to a close. Hard to believe. That is going to do it for today's show. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you on Sunday during the Rapid Reacts right here on The Upshot.